Back at the beginning of our studies, we were set a keyword project, and the word I chose was mission. My research took me to artist manifestos, and the one that stuck out and continues to inspire me is Ken Garland's First Things First manifesto. In 1963, Ken Garland became disillusioned with what he called the high-pitched scream of consumer selling. He wrote his manifesto and titled it First Things First. Garland saw more and more advertising of products that he considered a waste of time and effort. The manifesto argues that there were other deserving projects, such as signs for streets and buildings, books, instruction manuals, photography and educational aids, through which they could promote their trade. I've lived in Nepal for 8 years, and for my first practice assignment, Garland's manifesto motivated me to tackle some of the social issues that are prevalent in this beautiful country. I went on to produce some flashcards highlighting such things as pollution, human trafficking, child labour, gender equality, and child marriage. For my major study, I wanted again to produce something that would be a useful and worthy project for Nepal. Taking some of Garland's words literally, I chose to create a book, a manual, if you will, of road rules in Nepal. The aim was to educate not only new learner drivers, but those already on the road who were either blatantly ignoring the rules or were blissfully unaware of them. Kathmandu dates back to 300 AD, and it was the crossroads of two important trade routes between India in the south and Tibet in the north. Its population has trebled in the last 20 years to over 1 million. Today its streets are noisy, polluted and heavily congested. When I arrived in Nepal in 2011, one of the first things to hit me was the sheer numbers of vehicles on the road. The vast majority of these were scooters and motorbikes, which seemed to fill every available space on the streets, weaving in and out of the other cars, vans, trucks and buses. They had no regard for anyone else on the road, and the concept of queuing seemed remote. When I came to get my license, I was amazed at what the test involved. The goal was to weave between 5 poles without A, hitting any, B, putting your feet down, and C, missing any of the poles. Since then, the government of Nepal has introduced a more relevant practical test which does a little better at testing a rider's ability. There was also a written test of 20 questions, and to pass this I needed to answer only 10 of the questions correctly. The current book available to help learn the rules is called the Nepal Road User's Guide, and is just a list of the possible questions and answers. It's not very helpful in informing readers of the actual rules. A team of professionals of Nepalese origin, mainly working overseas in transport, traffic, road safety and allied fields, have put together a draft set of rules for the government of Nepal to consider. In their proposal, they suggest developing a simplified version of the rules, and it was this that I decided to do for my major project. Taking inspiration from both their draft document and the current official Highway Code of the UK, I put together a list of relevant rules that I wanted my book to cover. My first thought was to what format and size to make it, and I settled on 120 by 210mm, as this shape would aid a possible future development of the book into app form for smartphones. The work of David Plunkett has profoundly influenced me, and I really like his simple style of lines together with the dirty paper look, and also that of the Guerrilla series by Dutch group The Design Police, where they turn complex stories into iconic visuals. I decided to use this flat design style for my images. Nick Babich explains in The History of Flat Design Patterns that in the last decade we have seen a rapid shift from ultra-realistic design to almost flat. Flat design is a design style that is characterized by the lack of 3D visual effects and highly realistic graphical components. It uses two-dimensional visual details and objects with simple shapes. I first made some rough sketches of how the graphics might look, and then searched for some inspiration of how the vehicles might be represented. After finding some good examples, I started drawing my stock of vehicles in Illustrator. I settled on a simple rounded look to the graphics. I then set about trying to get the main style that all the images could follow. To help with this, I decided to begin with the cover image, which I thought could include a mixture of the various vehicles seen in Nepal travelling on a winding road set in front of a backdrop of the Himalayas. I started with a blue sky and added clouds, then a grass section at the bottom. On the horizon, I then added 3 snow-capped mountains. Later, I felt that something could be improved, and I chose to tweak the mountain slightly. Mount Everest is the world's tallest mountain. The peak has a very recognizable ledge on the right of the mountain known as the balcony, and I adjusted my image to portray this. I rounded the points of the snowcaps to more closely match the other elements in the design. Next, I added some hills in front of the mountains to reflect the valley that Kathmandu sits in, and a sunburst effect in the sky, followed by a winding road. Lastly, I added some of the vehicles and a person crossing the street. Initially, I designed the cover image as a full page, but later decided to make this square, as that was how the images would look inside the book. I briefly considered using isometric design for my images, but after a little experimentation, I decided to stick with the flat design because it has a crisp and modern feel and allows me to focus on what is most important, the content and the message. They also felt more accessible and looked warmer. For the colours on the cover and inside the book, I took inspiration from the flag of Nepal, which is unique in that it is the world's only non-quadrilateral flag and a source of pride to many Nepalis. The crimson red indicates the bravery of Nepali people, including the Gurkhas, and is the country's national colour. The blue border represents peace and harmony. Using these colours as bands across the top and bottom of the cover, I was then able to duplicate this look throughout the book, having a red box at the top of each page holding the rule number and title, with the image below this surrounded by a blue border. Below this was where the bullet points for each rule would go, and then at the bottom a smaller blue band to hold the page numbers. The next stage was to set about writing the bullet points for each rule. I turned to my word cloud and decided to put the rules into subsections according to the mode of transport type. After writing this list, I added 2 further sections for traffic signs and road markings. This gave me 7 sections in total, and I ended up with 41 different rules. I started with pedestrians, and I selected 3 issues that I was going to be tackling: crossing the road, jaywalking, and crossing at junctions. The government have built a few footbridges to help people cross busy roads. However, I frequently witnessed people ignoring them and crossing using the street, often right under the bridge itself, as in these cases. The behaviour of pedestrians is one of the scariest things as a driver on the roads of Nepal I have had to contend with. Using the base template, I was able to adjust the images for the various rules easily. With a collection of vehicles made in Illustrator, I was also able to easily modify the colours slightly for different pages. For rules 7 and 8, I decided to have the 2 images linked, showing various things over the 2 pages. I communicated this by having one scooter cross between the 2 pictures. I continued to make further images, and when I came to Rule 13 for overtaking, I found that I needed more than 1 page to communicate all of the relevant information. I decided to make this rule a spread, and as with Rules 7 and 8, I used the 2 images to make it look like one. As with a lot of countries in the world today, driving while using a mobile device is a big problem that the authorities are trying to make people aware of. For mirrors, I chose to show the Himalayan background reflected in the driver's mirror. The traffic signs currently in use in Nepal are adequate and very similar to the ones found in the UK. I used 8 pages to show all of the signs and what they mean, together with the various road markings. Finally, I ended the book by advising how to wait for and use public transport. Overcrowding is a huge problem in Nepal, and few realise the dangers. It is a frequent sight to see people hanging out of microbuses and tempos. I am delighted with the outcome and have had extremely positive comments from all that have seen the printed book. In the coming weeks, I will be meeting with those who have been working hard to improve the safety of the roads in Nepal, to discuss how we can make this project more widely available. This is exciting, and I hope that it can be a valuable resource to help in the battle for road safety in Nepal.